What does it mean when the people supposed to uphold the law celebrate the moment their boss gets fired? Not quietly, not privately, openly, publicly, with photographs. Across Department of Justice offices all over the United States, career prosecutors and veteran lawyers did something the moment Pam Bondi was removed as Attorney General. They took her official portrait off the wall, and they threw it in the trash can. Not metaphorically, literally, in the garbage. And then someone took photos and sent them to NBC News. That is not a normal reaction to a boss leaving. That is a message. That is an entire institution telling you in the clearest possible terms exactly what they thought of the person who had been running them. But here's the part that nobody saw coming. Because just when DOJ veterans thought the nightmare was over, they found out who was replacing her, and the celebration stopped. To understand why the trash can moment matters so much, you have to understand how Pam Bondi started her tenure as Attorney General. On one of her very first days inside the DOJ building, she was walking the halls. She came across a photo of Joe Biden and Merrick Garland that hadn't been taken down yet near someone's office. A small thing, an administrative oversight, the kind of thing that happens during any transition when thousands of details need managing. Bondi didn't ask someone to remove it. She didn't send a memo. She personally took the photo off the wall and threw it in the garbage herself. And then she told that story proudly, repeatedly, in speeches and interviews as proof of her loyalty and her values. Then she found out who had been responsible for that particular hallway. A man named Devin Debisher, a DOJ veteran, beloved by colleagues, the acting chief of the National Security Division, one of the most important roles in the entire department, a career professional who had spent years doing the hardest, most serious work the government asks of anyone. Bondi demoted him for not taking down a photo fast enough. That was day one. That was the tone she set, and the entire DOJ watched it happen and never forgot. What followed was, by every account from inside the building, a systematic dismantling of everything the Department of Justice is supposed to stand for. She put Donald Trump's personal banner on the DOJ building. Career prosecutors described it as humiliating, like watching someone plant a personal flag on an institution that belongs to the American people, not to any one man. She fired Ariel Ravelny, a career prosecutor who had done something radical by DOJ standards under this administration. He told the truth. Specifically, he told the truth about the deportation case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Bondi didn't just fire him, she announced publicly that he was being terminated for not being loyal to Trump. Think about what that sentence means coming from an attorney general. Not loyal to the Constitution, not loyal to the law, loyal to Trump. That's the standard she declared out loud for keeping your job at the Department of Justice. And then there were the Epstein files. Bondi had been trusted to manage the cover-up of those files with enough competence to keep the public pressure manageable. But the pressure kept building. Grand juries started rejecting her cases. Prosecutors she sent after Trump's political enemies came back empty-handed. Even Fox News host Jesse Waters, not exactly a fierce critic of this administration, sat across from her successor and said directly, "You don't understand how much people actually care about the Epstein files." In the end, Trump didn't fire Bondi because she was corrupt. He fired her because she wasn't competent enough at it. And so the question became, who replaces her? The answer was Todd Blanch, Donald Trump's former personal criminal defense attorney, the man who sat beside Trump in courtrooms and fought to keep him out of prison. Now, the acting Attorney General of the United States. Inside DOJ offices, when this news landed, something interesting happened. The high fives stopped. Because career prosecutors, the ones who had just celebrated Bondi's removal, understood something immediately that the general public is still catching up to. Pam Bondi was an outsider who came in and broke things. She was always going to be seen as a foreign presence, someone who didn't belong in that building and whose contempt for it was visible from day one. Todd Blanch is different. Todd Blanch is one of them. He came up through the Southern District of New York, one of the most prestigious prosecutorial offices in the country. He built his entire career inside the federal system. He knows every norm he's breaking. He understands every value he's betraying. He chose to do it anyway. Imagine a doctor who spent 20 years learning medicine, took an oath to do no harm, earned the trust of an entire hospital, and then started hurting patients deliberately. That's not just corruption, that's betrayal. And inside the DOJ community, betrayal from within cuts deeper than any outside attack ever could. One of his first acts as acting AG, he declared all investigations into the Epstein files officially closed. Done. No more questions, move on. He also boasted, publicly, proudly, that every FBI agent who had worked on January 6 prosecutions had been fired, not reassigned, not retired, fired, as a trophy, as proof of loyalty. Here is the part of this story that almost nobody is talking about, and it might be the most important part. Despite everything, despite Bondi's loyalty tests, despite Blanch's betrayals, despite the portraits in trash cans and the banners on buildings and the fired prosecutors and the buried files, the cases being brought against Trump's political enemies keep failing. Not because the judges are stopping them, because grand juries are. Ordinary American citizens sitting in jury rooms, hearing the evidence being presented by Bondi's prosecutors and saying no, refusing to issue indictments, refusing to rubber stamp political prosecutions dressed up as law enforcement. The grand jury is one of the oldest institutions in American legal history. It exists precisely for this moment. It is the last place where ordinary people can stand between political power and its abuse. And quietly, without headlines, without press conferences, it has been doing exactly that. Step back and look at the full picture. A woman who threw a photo in the garbage on day 1 ended up with her own portrait in the garbage on her last day. That's not irony, that's justice, the informal kind, delivered by the people she spent a year treating with contempt. But the story doesn't end with her removal. It never does, because the system that produced Bondi, that empowered her, that used her until she became a liability, that system is still running. It just has a new face, a smarter face. A face that knows exactly where all the walls are because he helped build some of them. Todd Blanch knows what the DOJ is supposed to be. He learned it there. He grew up professionally in those halls, and he chose, with full knowledge, full awareness, full understanding, to become the thing that destroys it. That is not incompetence, that is not confusion, that is a choice. And the only thing standing between that choice and its consequences, right now, today, is a room full of ordinary Americans on a grand jury who keep looking at the evidence and saying no. The institution is damaged, the leadership is compromised, the culture is hostile, but the people, the actual people, are still saying no. And that, for now, is the only thing holding the line.